begins Monday at 8, only on the Military Channel.
While the airplane's performance and speed were second to none, B-58 was not without its problems.
The B-58 airplane was a very difficult airplane to fly under some circumstances. When everything was working properly, all the systems were up and running, and you didn't have an engine anomaly or what have you, the airplane was absolutely a breeze to fly. Most of the pilots I've talked to enjoyed it, loved it. Many of the pilots think it's the apex of their career. It's the best thing that ever happened to them was to get to fly the B-58. But when things went wrong in the B-58, they usually went wrong in a real big way, and oftentimes with catastrophic results.
With this in mind, the escape pod was a concern for all involved. This final model was installed in the B-58 fleet in 1963 and could encapsulate the crew member and pressurize within 7 seconds. The pilot's capsule was modified to fit with the instruments so that he could fly the plane to below 40,000 feet before ejecting. Rockets would eject the capsule from the airplane, and the parachute then would lower it to the ground. No one was quick to volunteer to test this new system, so bears were used instead. They were given free rides in the Air Force's fastest bomber, then ejected from the airplane at speeds of Mach 2. The high performance of the B-58 led to several conceptual configurations for modified B-58s, some a bit harder to conceive than others.
There was a lengthy study conducted to convert one of those pods to a people carrier. They were literally going to put airline-type passenger seats in there and cut holes in the side of the pod and put windows in there. Everybody was absolutely convinced, you're not going to get me to ride in that, even if it was bolted on there.
Even from its entry into service in 1960, the B-58's role in the American arsenal was never destined to be long. Its use to the military had been minimized by the rapid improvement of missile technology and compounded by the Hustler's fairly high accident rate and maintenance costs. No one doubted the airplane could perform its mission, but the mission was no longer needed. The airplane entered operational service in the early 1960s, and by 1970 it was dead in the water. In fact, the last flight took place in 1970 when the last of the B-58s was delivered to what then was Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona, and placed in short-term storage. By 1970, a total of 86 Hustlers had been delivered to SAC since the first arrived a decade earlier. While its career was quite short, the B-58 had a fairly typical term of service for a SAC airplane, spending nearly all of its time sitting on runways, waiting for a signal all involved feared most. Despite the airplane's remarkable high and low altitude performance, single-strike nuclear bombers had little place in the missile age, and the last of the B-58s were withdrawn from service with the Strategic Air Command in January of 1970. I'd say its greatest claim to fame is that it was the first truly operational Mach 2 cruise capable airplane ever. It was big enough and carried enough fuel so that it could literally get up to Mach 2 and stay there for at least a modest amount of time. I mean, we're talking in terms of maybe a half hour. The other major attribute was that it simply could cruise at supersonic velocities for a long period of time. On several of its world record flights, it averaged speeds well in excess of 900 miles per hour, and we're talking for periods of time as long as 11 and 12 hours. So no other airplane in the world at that time had that capability. In terms of engineering, it was quite innovative, many different things that it advanced. We've talked about the potted system. To this day, no other airplane has really emulated that. It's one of, even to this day, one of the largest pure delta wing airplanes ever to fly. The world of aviation has progressed in leaps and bounds, often accelerated by the darkness of war, more often propelled by the willingness of men to dream, to imagine an airplane totally different from any that has come before.
To me, the B-58 has a special place in aviation history and in aeronautics. There have been tremendous gains from my days working at PBY. 90 knot, do everything. airplane through the F-16. The B-58 represented, during all that span of time, early 40s, even into the 90s now, but particularly when I retired in 1985, the biggest break in aircraft design that I think that we have seen.
Scarcely a decade before its first flight, man could only dream of an airplane like the B-58. At that time, bombers were still confined to the realm of big, heavy, rather clumsy machines. Thinking forever. Few would have dared to guess an airplane 98 feet long could carry a weight of 150,000 pounds at twice the speed of sound. And to those who got to fly it, nothing will ever compare to the Hustler.
We all liked that airplane so well that when you think back on those days, and this is the way I sort of felt about it, flying wasn't work. It was a hobby, it was a profession, it was your life.
The product of men willing to take risks, men who dared to dream, the Convair B-58 Hustler will forever be one of the world's great planes.